How many of you guys, if one of your exes reach out to you and you find that she was in distress, whether she was in the hospital or you find out she got stuck on a highway with a flat tire, or maybe she lost a loved one and she's been going through a tough emotional time. How many of you guys, would come to her aid, to be there for her in those tough times? Personally, I feel like as men, we have a sense of responsibility. Even when you're no longer in a relationship with somebody, we still have that sense of responsibility. I feel like we always have certain virtues that we feel like we have to adhere to in order to be a man, whether, to provide or to protect or to lead or nurture. Those are all the things that I feel like, often men, we take on these things onto ourselves, or we have to be all of these things in order to be a man. I myself, even when I was younger, when I was much younger, I felt like I needed a car, to be a man. I needed a job, right? And I needed my own place, right? I felt like I needed all of these things in order for me to feel validated, like I am a man, right? And eventually, once I attained these things, I added new virtues onto myself, right? For example, now, okay, you need to be able to provide for a woman, provide for a family once you have one. And you need to be able to lead, you need to be able to nurture, you need to be able to protect, whether physically, emotionally, or however, that's your job, right? And often I feel like we don't really acknowledge the cost of these things. We simply feel those are obligations that comes as a man, right? And often I feel like these things not that I'm against these things, I just feel like we never stop to think about the cost of these things, because often loving somebody can feel purposeful, right? Loving a woman can feel honorable, or it can give you a sense of motivation, now I need to do more, I need to be more, right? And often we don't realize when you give so much of yourself, in essence, you're also losing a part of yourself. Those are some emotions that I've been experiencing the past 2 months and a half since my ex and I broke up. Yeah, I've been going through a lot of emotions because we went through a lot. We went through a lot. We both done a lot of forgiving, a lot of growing, a lot of teaching, to got to the point that we were at. And then for her to just walk out, you know what I mean? And like I mentioned in the previous video, I understand why she left, but to me it was still shocking because certain things I feel like they can be worked through, right? So it's still shocking, but as a man, you have to be strong, that's a virtue. You always have to be strong, you know what I mean? You got to pick yourself up because who's exactly gonna be there when you can reach out to your boys, you know what I mean? But you can only be tender to a certain level, you know what I mean? Where get your shit together, bro. Get back on the horse. What are you doing? You know what I mean? So I feel like you always have to be tough, no matter what. We have all those virtues we have to carry. And often I feel like women, they kind of don't. You know what I mean? Because personally, I feel even when even my other exes, I still feel a sense of responsibility. As a man, once I decide that I love you, I feel even when we're not together, I still feel responsible for you. I find it that women find it much easier to move on or jump ship to another guy, or this is the guy that I love now. I still feel a lot of love in my heart. I still feel if I decided that, I don't know if it's a decision or not, if I decided that I love you, to me, from that point, I feel as a man, it's my responsibility to provide, to protect for you, and to do whatever it takes, to provide a safe environment for you, right? And often that stuff is not really being reciprocated. I understand as men we have our flaws, often dudes cheat and stuff like that. I just feel that sense of loyalty, it's much different for a man. If I'm willing to die for you, to me to me, like that means a lot. Because if I tell you I love you, like I really do love you, and like I'm willing to like put myself in danger, like, you know, I'm willing to die for you. And I feel like, you know, I'm still a bit conflicted, because I feel like as men, like you do need to like to have certain virtues, like you do need certain codes that you need to abide to, you know, because like I feel like if you don't have like your own codes, right, if you don't have your own virtues, you know, your own laws, like, you know, somebody can easily like, you know, inflict their laws or their rules on you, right? But at the same time, when we adhere to these things, you know, it can often be a detriment to us, you know what I mean? Especially like if it's not being reciprocated, especially like when you get that sense of purpose, right? When you get that sense of motivation when you are with a woman, right? When you get that sense of purpose, that sense of motivation, and you tend to try to do more, right? You tend to try to give more, right? Because that's our job, like to provide, right? And often you don't realize, like, you know, how much you lose yourself, and often it's like too late. That's when like you're out of the relationship. That's when you find out, like, damn, I really love this girl. Damn, I was like doing the most. I was giving a lot, right? But sometimes, you know, that love is not being appreciated, you know. Sometimes it's not being reciprocated, right? And often like we don't limit ourselves to like how much we love. You're just like, oh, like I really love this girl. I want to provide for her, and I want to be there for her, like no matter what, like, you know. And yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about, like after like, you know, the past like 2 months and a half, like since my last breakup. And yeah, I've been going through a lot of emotions, you know, like, though like I am able to like manage my emotions, you know, I'm not out here like crying. I still do what I gotta do. And like, to be honest with you, like I've been in the gym, the typical, you know, being in the gym every day, like literally, like, I think the past like 2 months and a half, I probably missed like 5 days. You know, I literally been in the gym every day. And honestly, that kind of has been like my therapy, you know. So yeah, that's something that, you know, that I've been thinking about. Like, you know, I've been through like a lot of emotions, you know, the past 2 months and a half, you know, because I didn't want to end the relationship. Like, I feel like me and this girl, we went through so much. And yeah, we got to the point where, like, you know, she's done a lot to make me trust her, and like vice versa. Like, we both pour in a lot into the relationship, you know, for it to end it the way it did, you know. To be fair, I mean, I do understand why it ended, you know. I do understand, but I feel like there were, you know, it wasn't things that we couldn't work through, you know. Maybe in another video, I can be more transparent about the actual reason. I know I've mentioned, like, you know, certain stuff that she's seen, like, through my computer. If you watch my other videos, you would see I mentioned, like, some of these things, but there are, like, deeper reasons that I haven't discussed. And yeah, I just wanted to share, like, you know, I feel like as a man, we adhere to all those virtues, you know, and it's often like we don't limit ourselves, you know, we don't watch like how much, you know, or if it's being reciprocated, you know, or the detriment of like the cost of, like, you know, I will take on, like, you know, being a provider, being a leader, being a nurturer, you know, a leader, you know. I mean, I've mentioned that already, but like all of those virtues, you know, all of those virtues, even myself, like even when I was as a kid, you know, like I had certain virtues, and as I get older, I'm like, you know, we take on these things. I feel like women, they often like, they worry about their own happiness, right? And they worry about like anybody that's gonna come in my life, they need to make me happy, right? And as men, we more like, oh, like I gotta give. And I feel like women often more on the receiving end. And often when things go south, they are able to move on and jump ship, like move on to the next guy, like, you know, like this is who I love now. And as a man, like I feel like I feel like we tend to love a little bit more, right? Because, you know, not often, you know, I tell women that I love them, but once I actually get there, I'm like, okay, like that's somebody that I would actually die for, right? So like that's how I feel. So like my loyalty, like my heart, like these things are like strong, right? Once like I'm settled in that, like I feel like I'm there, right? And yeah, so like I've been going through a lot of emotions. Obviously, like, I'm doing a lot better now. Like honestly, I've been in the gym every day. Like that's something that distract me from like all those emotions, right? And that was somebody who I thought like, that I was settled in my mind, like to spend the rest of my life with. And yeah, it's been pretty tough. But as I realized like certain things, for example, like initially, like, she wasn't the best person, right? And I realized, she only started to become like a better person like when she got emotionally involved in like in or entanglement or whatever you want to call it in our interactions or whatever you want to call it. Like initially like she didn't start being a good person until like she's her feelings got involved, right? And the moment the relationship ended, like it's almost like she revert back to that same person like all over again, just being cold, nonchalant, and unresponsive, right? Like it was pretty shocking to see somebody just revert to like, oh, like treating you like a complete stranger, like you didn't mean anything to them. Like to me, like it was pretty baffling. When I feel like when I decide like that I love you, I want to be with you, like to me like that stuff means a lot. That's not something I can snap my finger and just like I'm out of it now. You know what I mean? So like especially like somebody who try to adhere to a lot of virtues, who actually care. I'm like, okay, like, if I decided that I'm gonna be with you, I love you, I wanna be with you, like then I gotta, give my all and like provide, protect, lead and all of these things, to be fair, I'm not perfect, you know what I mean? But like I've always lead with like communication, like, if something is going on, like let me know what's going on, let's talk about it. Most things are not that bad, right? And you don't need to get upset over most things are not that bad, right? The only time I would get upset about anything is like if I feel like I'm being disrespected. That was the only time. Any other time, like I'm like, oh, like it's okay. Oh, like you said you was gonna do this and you forgot. Oh, like that's okay. You know what I mean? Like it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Oh, like you forgot to do this or like whatever it is. Like if it's not a big deal, like to me, like it's not worth getting mad over, right? The only time I would trip over anything is like when I feel like I'm being disrespected. And often I lay down like my boundaries. I'm like, oh, like that's one thing, like that's a non-negotiable. Like, I'm not gonna tolerate any type of disrespect, right? Yeah, so like I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate, like when you give so much of yourself and often like you might find yourself like losing a bit of yourself because in essence, like when you give, something is being taken away, and if you're not mindful, because like so like you know somebody like that you care about deeply can easily walk out of your life any moment. Like you have no control over that, right? It's hard like trying to pick the pieces back up, like finding yourself again, or like I gotta build my own internal like motivation. Like me, like immediately after the breakup, like I started going to the gym. I was already in the gym. I'm like, okay, like so in a way, like I feel like it kind of helped like my state of mind, like being always being like refreshed. Every time I hit the gym, I feel new, a lot of power, a lot of energy, so yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about. Basically just sharing my thoughts, like being transparent. To be honest with you guys, I've mentioned like about having a background with like video production, and like I often tell people, if you want to be on YouTube, you have to be transparent. Just showing the side of you that's unique, instead of like reading a script or reading ChatGPT, like just, be transparent, be vulnerable, and like show who you are, so I'm basically taking my own advice, on this channel and like sharing a little bit more, if you guys, want to be part of the journey, like the journey is basically to monetize this channel in the 6 months, just, if you guys want to hear more from me, I would love it if you guys like subscribe and leave me a comment and let me know how you feel, or like when was the last time you was in a relationship, or like things like that. I'd be more than happy to hear and read all of that. Yeah, I think that's all for today. Love you guys. Peace.